and welcome to Pitboards and Podiums with me, Maya Westwick. Today I am doing the first track guide of the 2024 season, so buckle up and let's talk F1. Alright guys, so today I am going to be giving you your 2024 Bahrain track guide. I'm very excited for this. This is of course the first of the season because it is officially the start of the 2024 season. It is race week. We are racing in Bahrain this weekend. So, first of all, for those of you who can see me, yes, I am currently wearing a very fluffy, massive, oversized hoodie. I'm feeling the cold today and I would like to be comfortable. So now that we've addressed that, let's get into the information. First of all, the timings for this weekend. This is very, very important because these are not normal timings. Because of Ramadan, obviously we're in Bahrain this weekend and then next weekend we are in Saudi Arabia. Both of these weekends are different to normal. The race is going to be on Saturday, not on Sunday, okay? So of course that does change the timings for every other session as well. So on Thursday we have got the first practice session, FP1, at 11:30 AM here in the UK, which is of course at 2:30 PM in Bahrain. And then we've got practice 2 at 3 PM on Thursday here in the UK, 6 PM in Bahrain. And then on Friday we've got practice 3 at 12:30 here in the UK or 3:30 in Bahrain, and qualifying at 4 PM here in the UK, starting at 7 PM in Bahrain. And then on Saturday we've got the race, which starts at 6 PM local time, which is 3 PM here in the UK. Anywhere else in the world you can work it out, either use the conversion from Bahrain's local time, which is GMT plus 3, or convert it from GMT being 3 PM. It's up to you. Now that we've got that bit covered, I'm going to go into the track itself, give you some stats about it, and then talk a little bit about last year's race, just to kind of give you a little bit of context about what happened last year, so you can maybe have some expectations ahead of this year. Of course, with it being the first race of the season, it's the most unpredictable because we don't really know. Yes, we've just had 3 days of testing, but we don't really know where the cars are at right now. We don't know who was sandbagging. We don't know who maybe was pretending to have more performance than they do. We don't really know, and we're going to find that out this weekend, which I think is very exciting. So, the Bahrain International Circuit. The variation of the circuit that we use in Formula 1 is the Grand Prix circuit. They do 57 laps around that. It is a 3.363 mile circuit. There are 15 turns, 9 to the right and 6 to the left, with hairpins at turns 8 and 10. There's 3 DRS zones and we have 4 straights as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for cars to build up a lot of speed. The first Formula 1 race in Bahrain was in 2004, with construction on the circuit starting in 2002. This made it the first Formula 1 race in the Middle East, with Egypt, Lebanon and the UAE all also fighting for the prestige of holding a Formula 1 Grand Prix. Of course, now we do also have a Grand Prix in the UAE, Abu Dhabi, but we don't have anything in Egypt or Lebanon. The circuit was designed by Herman Tilke, who has also designed many tracks in recent Formula 1 additions to the calendar. He's also worked on redesigning areas of a lot of iconic tracks, both in and out of Formula 1. I believe it was the Nürburgring that he redesigned slightly. I'm getting myself confused between the Nürburgring and the Hockenheimring now, but one of them, if not both of them, he had a part in redesigning. He is one of 4 track designers that are like approved by the FIA, but he is the only one that's actually really being used at the moment, so good for him. The record for the most poles at Bahrain is shared between Sebastian Vettel and Sir Lewis Hamilton with 3 each, and the record for the most wins is held by Sir Lewis Hamilton with 5. The race lap record is 1 minute 31.447 seconds. That was set by Pedro de la Rosa in his McLaren in 2005. And the qualifying lap record is 1 minute 27.264 seconds, set by Sir Lewis Hamilton during Q3 of the 2020 qualifying Bahrain Grand Prix. Pole position is situated on the left-hand side of the track, which is on the outside down to turn 1. The start line to turn 1 distance is 336.49 metres. 72% of the lap is completed on full throttle with a maximum speed of around 329.6 kilometres per hour or 204.804 miles per hour. And the longest flat out section is 1.205 kilometres long. This is what I'm saying about the straights and the DRS zones and the chance to build up a lot of top speed. This is a really good circuit for seeing pure power of an engine in a Formula 1 car. The drivers have to complete about 56 different gear changes per lap, and the pit loss time is around 18.9 seconds. Under normal green flag conditions, of course, that is then reduced under a safety car or virtual safety car. The tyres that are available to the teams this weekend are the C1, C2 and C3 compounds. This is the same as last year, so the 3 hardest tyres in the range. That is because the surface at Bahrain is an extremely high grip surface. It's the same material as the Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi, which is a grey whack aggregate shipped from a quarry in Shropshire, and it can be very testing for tyre and brake management, and it's a very high degradation circuit. That is why we've got such hard tyres, and it's also why it's a lot better for this to be a night race, which it didn't always used to be. It's a lot better for Bahrain to be a night race because the surface itself is challenging in terms of tyre wear and in terms of overheating the brakes and all of that sort of thing, and that's with a relatively cool atmospheric temperature around the cars compared to daytime running in Bahrain, so that is something that is definitely beneficial to the teams. The Bahrain International Circuit has 6 different layouts within the outer perimeter of the track, including a test oval and a drag strip as well. The outer circuit was used in 2020 for the Sakhir Grand Prix, the week after the Bahrain Grand Prix, when we had to swap things around a little bit because of COVID. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, Bahrain is now a night race, and it has been since 2014, which was kind of to give the event a new lease of life, with 5,000 lights being situated around the circuit to illuminate it. Before then, from 2004 to 2014, it was a daytime race in the desert, so you can imagine how hot that would have got. There are very, very long runoff areas to help prevent the sand from the desert blowing onto the track. The sand is also sprayed with an adhesive to try and prevent it coming onto the track as well, but the surface does have to be cleaned between every session, of course. I mean, that happens in Formula 1 anyway, but even more so here, and any areas of the track that you don't normally drive on anyway that's not really the racing line will have a build-up of sand on it. Not like a huge amount of sand, but it will be sandy and dirty. These long runoff areas also make it relatively one of the safest Grand Prix tracks in Formula 1, because of course it means that you're not smashing into a wall at 200 miles an hour. The worst accident in recent F1 history at Bahrain was, of course, Grosjean's horror crash in 2020. Even the safest circuits, there are horrific accidents that can happen. Obviously, luckily, Grosjean managed to walk away from that with his life and get back into racing in other series. But, of course, it's something that is going to be present at every track we go to. There is always a risk of that sort of thing happening. There's no alcohol on the podium in Bahrain as it is a dry country, so they use rose water instead of the typical champagne bottles that are sprayed on the podium. It's often used for pre-season testing, as it has been this year and many years recently, and it's also often the first race of the year in recent years, because it just makes sense that if they're testing there, the next week they then start there. So that has been the case for the last few years, although I do believe it's changing back to Australia next year for the opening race. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong, but I think it is. Bahrain also hosts endurance races, Formula 2, Formula 3, the Porsche Carrera Cup. It's hosted GT races and supercars too, among other series. So it is a circuit that gets a fair amount of use, considering it was purpose built for Formula 1 to be able to race there. And I think it's worth me mentioning, this isn't really like a statistic, but this is just for anyone who's a little bit superstitious about things or anything like that. There is kind of speculation that there is a curse on Bahrain, or just statistically, I mean, this was broken last year, but statistically if you win Bahrain, you don't win the World Drivers' Championship that year. In recent years in Formula 1, whichever driver won Bahrain did not go on to win the World Drivers' Championship. A lot of the time, the winner of the World Drivers' Championship either finished really poorly in Bahrain or didn't finish at all recently. And then they went on to win the championship. So maybe root for someone you don't want to win the championship to win Bahrain. Maybe, if you're superstitious. If not, root for your favourite driver, because you don't care. You don't care about the superstitious stuff, and that's fine. So I'm going to talk about the 2023 race, just to give you a little bit of context. I'm not going to go into detail about what happened in the race or anything like that. I'm just going to give you kind of some facts and information from it. So Verstappen won the race, which is what I'm saying about the curse not being there last year. He had a race time of 1 hour, 33 minutes and 56.736 seconds. He comfortably led the race throughout. He only lost the lead briefly during pit stops and then obviously got it back once everyone had stopped. So he very, very comfortably won. He had an almost 12-second gap to Sergio Perez in P2 at the time of race finish. So, of course, if Red Bull are the same rocket ship this year and no one can really challenge them, it's potential that could happen this year. But let's hope not. I'm hoping that the field this year is much more bunched together. We had 3 DNFs last year, which were Esteban Ocon, Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. Piastri DNF'd first. He DNF'd on lap 13 with an electrical failure. Leclerc then DNF'd on lap 39 with a engine failure. He had no power on his car. And then Ocon DNF'd on lap 51. He retired with mechanical issues. He'd already had quite a bad race, bless him. He got a 5-second penalty. And then he got a 10-second penalty for not serving the 5-second penalty correctly. And then he got another 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, I think it was, while serving the 10-second penalty. I think, again, my memory is poor, I do apologise. But he did not have a good race and then he didn't finish it anyway. Lando Norris also had a particularly bad race last year because, of course, at the start of the year last year, McLaren was dreadful, to put it lightly. So he also had engine issues. His issues were with his hydraulics. And he needed to stop 6 times in the pits to manage that issue, so he finished in last place, 2 laps down. Not ideal. Sargent, Magnussen, De Vries, Hulkenberg and Zhou Guanyu were also all 1 lap down at the race finish. Zhou did actually set the fastest lap of the race with a 1 minute 33.996 second lap on lap 56, going at an average speed of 207.276 kilometers per hour. And Hulkenberg also had 15-second penalty on his race for multiple track limit infringements. So track limits is something that the drivers and teams are going to have to look out for. You know, if their cars aren't the most stable, if they're battling over or understeer, there's always the potential that they're going to run wide, and obviously that is not ideal because then they're going to get violations of track limits and they're going to get penalties, and that's going to affect their race. So that is something that the teams are going to have to manage. In Bahrain, the wind can also sometimes be a factor because obviously it is the desert, like there's not really anything around them to stop the wind getting at them and affecting them. So if the wind does pick up, it is very potential that they are going to have to deal with winds. It's also potential in Bahrain that the wind in one end of the track is going in a different direction to the other end of the track. So just because you've got a headwind at turn 1 doesn't mean you know that you're going to have a tailwind at turn 15, if that makes sense. We had Sergio Perez in P2, as I said, and then Fernando Alonso completed the podium in P3. Sainz was in P4, Hamilton P5, Stroll P6, Russell P7, Bottas P8, Gasly P9 and Albon P10, making up the last of the points positions. In terms of qualifying, Verstappen was on pole. He had a qualifying pole time of 1 minute 29.708 seconds. And then we had Perez P2, Leclerc P3, Sainz P4, Alonso P5, Russell P6, Hamilton P7, Stroll P8, Ocon P9 and Hulkenberg P10 for the top 10 on the grid. So in terms of this year's race, it's going to be interesting to see maybe if the cars are a bit closer together, if the field's a bit more bunched up, to see if people are able to challenge the Red Bulls, which will be ideal, to be quite honest. And I think it'll be very interesting as well to see here in Bahrain what happens with the curse this year. I don't know how I feel about superstition in Formula 1. Superstition in general, I'm quite superstitious. Within Formula One, I feel like some things it's just like correlation is not causation. Do you know what I mean? It's like a home race curse. It's not always the case, but I do think it's something fun. It's something fun to kind of cling on to be like, my driver didn't win in Bahrain, but that's fine because it means that then he can win the World Drivers' Championship. I think it's just a bit of fun. But no, I think it'd be very interesting to see who is on top. I mean, from the testing sessions, of course, Verstappen's been very fast, but also, I mean, the Ferrari is looking very, very good. It's kind of the general consensus that Ferrari is probably the second fastest car based on testing. Of course, we haven't seen their full potential yet. McLaren's also looking very good. Lando did very well on day 2 of testing. Mercedes are not doing too badly. I think it's going to be very interesting. Mercedes seems like it's a lot easier to handle this year. So if they're not having to battle their car around the circuits, they're going to get more performance out of it. So I think, again, that's something to keep an eye on. So I think that we're going into a very competitive season, hopefully. Fingers crossed, unless Red Bull's massively sandbagged and then we have another year like last year, but let's hope not. So I hope that this year is going to be very, very competitive and that we're going to get to see some really good racing. And do you know what? Bahrain is quite a good circuit for it because there's some areas of the track that are so wide that you can literally get cars going 3 abreast, 4 abreast on some parts of the track. And that's just so exciting. I mean, during testing, they literally started racing each other on day 2, which again was very exciting. So I'm very excited to see it. And I'm so excited for the season to start. For those of you who didn't follow me on TikTok for last season, I'm just going to kind of explain to you what I'm going to do this year. So last year on TikTok, I would do an everything you need to know ahead of the Grand Prix. Same sort of thing as what I'm doing with this track guide. I'd do that ahead of the Grand Prix, and then afterwards I'd do recaps, but I'd kind of break it down and I'd do like a qualifying recap or like a sprint Saturday recap and a race. What I'm going to do this time, instead of doing that on the TikTok, I'm doing it here on the podcast. So I'm doing these track guides every week for each race. So ahead of each race weekend, there will be a track guide uploaded. And then a couple of days after the race, whether that's on the Saturday or the Sunday, a couple of days after, I will be uploading a whole race weekend recap, discussing everything, mainly from the Saturday and Sunday sessions. Unless anything particularly dramatic happens in a practice session, I'm not really going to discuss the practice sessions, but I will be discussing the qualifying, any sprint information, and of course the race. And I'll do all of that in one place so that you can just get all of the information in one place, and then I can just do more smaller individual things over on the TikTok. So if you want to follow the TikTok, it is at Pitboards and Podiums, all one word, and I'd love to see you over there. I'm really hoping to kind of build things up this year and create a lovely little community of F1 fans. That is the goal for this year. So please do come and join me. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do stick around for more. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you very, very soon. Please rate the podcast, share the podcast, whatever you're able to do. And yeah, I will see you very, very soon for some more episodes. We've got obviously a recap coming up. We've got some more driver profiles coming up that haven't gone out yet. So it's a very exciting time. And I am really looking forward to this upcoming season. Thank you very much. Bye.